Yo, Animatormon here with a Doctor Who review for you. Spoiler warning for Series 10 of Doctor Who, obviously. So it's been a while since Series 10 ended, and I thought I'd take time to talk about it. First I'll give you some thoughts on the notable episodes of the series, then I'll give you my overall thoughts. The Pilot, a dull title for a dull episode. The pilot was okay. It was serviceable, if not forgettable, in my opinion. We're introduced to Bill, the new companion. I don't get why everybody loves Bill so much. Perhaps it's because Clara was received so negatively that Bill is amazing by comparison. Perhaps there's an aspect of the character that I'm just missing. I don't dislike Bill, but I don't love her either. She fills the companion role just fine. We simply don't know enough about this story's monster. It's a sort of sentient oil puddle that merges with Heather? I'm actually not sure. It's left vague, and that's a problem. My mind is going crazy at the implications of this thing. It can traverse time and space in nearly an instant, and, as we learn later, is nearly godlike in its ability to reshape matter. And this is just an oil leak. What kind of alien race creates a spacecraft where the oil leak has this kind of power? These beings must be beyond godlike themselves. Yet we never find out, and it's driving me crazy. The puddle ends up feeling like a cheap plot device. It's fun to see the Doctor as a cool professor, and the story sets up a potentially interesting status quo. It's never really utilized, though. Thin Ice. The first time I watched this story, I loved it. I thought it effectively explored Bill and the Doctor as characters, while also establishing their dynamic. However, on repeat viewings, it just got worse and worse for me. Thin Ice is so close to being great, but a major misstep sinks the whole thing for me. The Doctor gives an engaging speech to Bill after the boy dies, and I give the story credit for going through with that death. The speech perfectly encapsulates what it means to be the Doctor. He's a good man who wants to help people, but he's lived too long and seen too many deaths to get drowned in the emotions of it. He may be a caring man, but let's not forget that he's still an outsider. He obviously has compassion, but he knows that wallowing in sorrow simply leads to more deaths. He's distanced enough to understand that. It's one of my favorite speeches in Doctor Who. Too bad it's completely ruined a few scenes later when the Doctor punches that guy. All that talk of keeping a cool head and playing things smart is tossed right out the window. I don't get why he punches that guy. Did the Doctor forget that racism exists? He's obviously come across prejudiced people countless times in his travels. Why does he suddenly lose self-control around this one? And what happened to the Doctor only using violence when he had to? Is he gonna start running around punching people now? What the heck happened to Brain over Brawn? This dude was the epitome of cold logic. Remember Into the Dalek? I miss Series 8, 12th Doctor. Anyway, that's the main problem I have with this story. There are other more minor issues, but that's what really ruins it for me. Oxygen. This is a confused story. I say that because it obviously knows what it wants to be about, yet it doesn't seem to know how to be about it. Oxygen is about criticizing capitalism. How do I know this? The Doctor repeats the word capitalism over and over again. The idea is that the nature of capitalism has driven this company to kill its workers and replace them with automated suits, all in the pursuit of higher profits. It almost makes sense, if not for a couple details. The workers are also consumers of the product, oxygen in this case. Why is this a problem? Because that means the company isn't only killing workers, it's killing customers too. That doesn't seem like it's good for profits. In fact, why do they need to kill the workers anyway? Wouldn't it cost a lot of money covering up their deaths? I imagine people would ask questions, especially family members of the workers. The episode tries to make it seem like capitalism is incentivizing murder, yet I don't understand how. I don't understand how it would cost the company anything to simply fire them all. Hey, that's a negative of capitalism right there. Automated machines replacing human workers. Yet that isn't what's focused on. Any way you slice it, this villain plot makes no sense. The story wasn't all bad though. Oxygen is great at creating a chilling and suspenseful atmosphere. It's got a fantastically morbid opening to set the tone. Using the Doctor's lecture to help set up this tone was a great use of the status quo the pilot set up. And that scene, where Bill's about to be exposed to the vacuum of space with no helmet, is splendidly directed, making us feel what Bill does in that moment. Wait a minute. How did the Doctor hack the station while blind? Is the screen in Braille? The story has a great cliffhanger, where it reveals that the Doctor is still blind at the end. Modern Who actually managed to catch me off guard and surprise me. Something that doesn't happen too often anymore. Extremis. I love Extremis. It's the first part in the Monk 3-parter. Although if you ask me, it isn't really a 3-parter. It's 3 separate stories, each with its own beginning, middle, and end, that carry on from where the last left off. There's a big difference. It's the difference between Under the Lake Before the Flood and The Girl Who Died, the Woman Who Lived. Extremis is the first story of Series 10 that I thought was truly great. The mystery of the Veritas is engaging. I was on the edge of my seat anticipating what it could possibly say to cause people to commit suicide. The Doctor's blindness is used effectively. There are moments when the Doctor's helplessness is nearly tangible. He can't do something as simple as read some text. It also gives Nardole a more vital role in the show. Prior to this, he was just sort of there. I won't lie, I practically cheered when the Doctor mentioned that he was a Prydonian. I was so happy that this bit of lore from the classic series was being reintroduced to Doctor Who. Hopefully they do something with it, like address the fact that, for some reason, all Time Lords are depicted wearing Prydonian colors nowadays. The Pyramid at the End of the World. Right off the bat, this story renders the previous entirely pointless. The warning that the virtual Doctor sent the real Doctor wasn't utilized at all. If you skipped Extremis, you wouldn't miss a thing. Why didn't the Doctor do something to prepare for the monks? Did the Doctor just sit on his ass doing nothing? The Lie of the Land. Lie of the Land is an incredibly disappointing ending to this trilogy. There were 3 episodes to hash out the monk plot, and the ending still felt lazy and rushed. The monks end up being letdowns. With Extremis and the Pyramid at the End of the World acting as hype for the monks, our expectations for their abilities and origins were high. At least mine were. The monks end up looking incompetent. Why would they just let Bill roam around unsupervised? She's the one person who could ruin their plans. And in the end, the monks are defeated by the power of love. Ugh. There's some seriously lazy writing here. Bill is able to resist the mind-altering effects of the monks because her mom? We're told that the only way to defeat the monks is for Bill to die. Bill doesn't die, yet the monks are defeated anyway. Everything is just so easy for our protagonists. They barely have to try in this story. The most infuriating scene in the whole story is Bill's confrontation with the Doctor. The Doctor, pretending to side with the monks, goads Bill into shooting him. He fake regenerates for a bit, then reveals the ruse. For a split second, before logic took over, I actually thought that it was real. I thought Bill had actually shot the Doctor, that the Doctor was actually regenerating. How amazing would that have been? No one was suspecting a regeneration in the middle of the series. How incredible would it have been if we were all caught off guard with Capaldi's real regeneration? It was but a fleeting thought. In reality, the scene was just a stupid regeneration tease. I hate regeneration teases so much. Starting with the 10th Doctor, gone are the days of surprise regenerations. Not only will we always know when a Doctor will regenerate, but we also have to have this stupid foreshadowing. The scene doesn't even make sense. Why would the Doctor fake regenerate for Bill? She doesn't know what regeneration is. It was just a stupid fake out for the audience. The Empress of Mars. This story felt like a 3rd Doctor 6-parter crammed into one 45-minute episode. That is where the major problems spring from. We get a rushed plot, a bland villain, and beyond underdeveloped side characters. There simply isn't enough time to do all the things this episode needs to. It should have been, at minimum, a 2-parter. It needed more time to let things develop naturally, as well as more time to breathe. You know, I gotta say, I am not a fan of the Queen's design. I don't dig the Predator look. It doesn't gel well with the other Ice Warrior designs, at least in my opinion. Credit where credit is due. It's refreshing to see a story that takes place on an alien planet. I also really like the concept. It feels like something the classic series would come up with. I also appreciate the story as a prequel to The Curse of Peladon. I literally cheered when Alpha Centauri showed up. I was in a fantastic mood hours after watching the story, due solely to its appearance. Towards the end, Nardole is forced to get help from the Master in order to get the TARDIS back to the Doctor. But why did the TARDIS fly off and then refuse to go back? Why did it let the Master take her back? I haven't a clue, and the episode doesn't seem to know either. It comes off as lazy writing done simply to get the Master involved. Again, more time might have allowed a decent explanation. World Enough and Time. This is, hands down, the best story this series. I absolutely love World Enough and Time. I'm confident in saying that it is the best Cyberman story in Modern Who. There's just no competition. I like when Doctor Who goes dark and doesn't hold back. Stephen Moffat proves that he understands the Cybermen. Their very existence is horrifying. The Cybermen live in perpetual pain and misery, and to the outsider, they are an omen of humanity's inevitable future. Moffat is on point in this episode, down to the little details. A truly inspired choice was to establish that the Cyberman headgear doesn't stop the pain, it just stops the individual caring about it. That is chilling, and gives a new horror to the 10th planet. The episode brilliantly captures this tone of creeping dread. This is partly due to the writing, but a large part of it is to the directing and acting. Another clever little detail is the tear that escapes Bill's Cyberman eye, providing us a thematic origin for the teardrop on future Cyberman designs. Bill has never been better in my opinion. Pearl Mackie gives a fantastically human performance that helps to display the horror of the Cybermen. Throughout the series, the Doctor kept giving these speeches that amount to, "I'm amazing and great," which he used to instantly earn himself the trust of everyone around him. It was becoming increasingly annoying to me. So when the Doctor starts to give said speech in World Enough and Time, I rolled my eyes. But then it didn't work. I, like many, was completely caught off guard when Bill was shot. It's almost like they created this expectation with the speeches just so they could subvert it in the finale. On a side note, the jumping back and forth from present day to flashbacks felt pointless. Just start at the beginning, please. I was completely fooled by the Master's disguise. I know some people caught it straight away, but I honestly think it's due to the spoiler of John Sim being in the finale. Also, the Master's wearing a disguise! In the classic series, the Master had two main shticks. He hypnotized people, and he wore disguises. I can't believe it took 10 years since the Master's reintroduction for him to do one of those things. And I very much appreciate Sim's Master wearing all black and having a beard. I never really liked Sim's Master. He was always too over the top and goofy for my tastes. Here he feels more like the Master. He might not be what I like in the Master, but he at least feels like the character, as opposed to his previous appearances. I clung to my memory of this episode's ending as tightly as possible before the next. Why? Because Moffat has a track record with finale two-parters. Part 1 is amazing and brilliant, while Part 2 is disappointing and undoes the greatness of the previous episode. For the week between this episode and the next aired, I prayed that for once Moffat would commit to what happened to Bill as the irreversible horror that it was. Commit to the amazing Cyberman origin story that it was, and commit to the trap the Master led the Doctor into. The Doctor falls. Moffat did not commit. Moffat cannot let his characters die. Name of the Doctor was clearly supposed to be River's final appearance. But then she showed up in The Husbands of River Song. Clara dies in Face the Raven, and the Doctor says goodbye to her in Heaven Sent. Then she's back to life as an immortal in Hell Bent. Now Bill gets converted into a Cyberman, and then he gets brought back to life as an immortal by Heather. I really hope that Chibnall understands that this needs to change. When characters die, they need to stay dead. Otherwise death means nothing and all tension is removed from the show. What Moffat does also robs the emotional impacts of these characters' goodbyes. The story also stops being about the Cybermen. They become what they often are in Modern Who, a generic robot army. They stomp around, go pew pew, and then explode. Your standard stuff. Okay, to be fair, I am exaggerating a little. What we do with Bill as a Cyberman is interesting. It's just that the Cybermen as a whole are relegated to action fodder. Almost immediately, the Doctor gets out of the Master's trap. He does so by typing theatrically. The Masters mostly just stand around doing nothing for the rest of the story. That awesome reveal last episode? It's for nothing. They just stand around until they decide to leave. The way they get the TARDIS dematerialization circuit, like a lot of Moffat's writing, is lazy. By the way, the changing the hearts from 1 to 2, that's stupid and doesn't make any sense. The Masters are here to kill each other, and I have to give Moffat props. That was a great idea and a great scene. Both Masters dying at the hands of the other speaks volume about who the Master is as a character, and it also shows why the end of time is stupid. I just wish they had something to do leading up to that scene. The Doctor gives a beautiful speech to the Masters in an attempt to convince them to stay and help. The Sim Master's reaction is perfect. At that moment, he is the Master. I like what we do with Bill as a Cyberman. However, I don't like her being able to overpower the programming. While there are reasonable excuses for it, to me it feels like overcoming programming has become a cliche at this point in Doctor Who. I also would have been impressed if they fully committed to her being a Cyberman, and never showed Pearl Mackie. I understand the need to give Pearl Mackie screen time, I just think it would have added an extra layer of tragedy to Bill's fate. Hold on. If Bill is overpowering the mental Cyberman programming, doesn't that mean she's also overpowering the headgear? Shouldn't she be in constant agony? Now that would have been horrifying. The Doctor starts to regenerate, for real this time. Instead of accepting it, however, the Doctor is attempting to suppress the change. Wait a minute. Is the Doctor attempting suicide? Because preventing a regeneration from occurring results in death. I mean, that's what happened to the Master in Last of the Time Lords. If that is the case, I expect the Christmas special to deal with some very dark subject matter. So, Series 10 had several missed opportunities. At the start of the series, we get this impression that the Doctor is grounded at this university for the time being, yet this idea goes nowhere. In the end, the university setting felt meaningless. There was nothing done with it. How interesting would it have been if Series 10 was an early Pertwee-style series? It's completely Earth-based, with the threats coming to the Doctor instead of the other way around. The show would finally have a good excuse to set all of its stories on Earth. I never thought the writers would do something as drastic as make the Doctor blind, even temporarily. It's a smart way to give the Doctor a handicap in situations he would otherwise dominate. I would argue that it isn't taken advantage of to its fullest potential. It only lasts 3 episodes. I would have liked to have seen it last up till the regeneration, with the Doctor having to rely heavily on Nardole and Bill up to the end. That does bring up some questions though. If the Doctor were blind and went through a regeneration, would he get his sight back? Just a thought. Fuck. The Master's arc in this series felt especially odd to me. She's turning good because we're never told. The first time we properly meet the Master, not in flashback, is in The Lie of the Land. At the start, she's her usual self, bluntly telling them to kill Bill in order to defeat the monks. At the end, however, we see her feeling remorseful for all the lives she's taken. But why? Why has she started feeling guilty? What was the catalyst for this? We're never told, so it feels like she's just turning good off screen. I honestly thought it was just a ruse for the longest time. The Master has killed billions, and attempted to kill even more, yet has never felt remorse before. Heck, this version of the Master killed without remorse just last series. This plot thread felt very half-baked to me, like the writers hadn't quite thought it through. To me, this series felt like a mix of stories ranging from bad to meh, with 1 or 2 great episodes hiding in the monotony. This series felt like a large dip in writing quality. Even Series 7 wasn't as mediocre as this. There are certain problems that have plagued Modern Who since 2005. These problems are especially prevalent in Series 10. It's an issue that stems from most stories being told within a single 45-minute episode. This time restraint constantly leads to underdeveloped villains, underdeveloped side characters, and rushed third acts. Most episodes of the series have at least one of these flaws. I don't understand the love that Series 10 is getting. To me, it pales in comparison to Series 8 and 9. The major flaws in this series appear to go unnoticed by the majority of people. If the writing quality doesn't improve soon, I fear that bad things will happen to Doctor Who. I don't mean to sound too pessimistic. These are just my genuine feelings on Series 10. Anyway, fuck me. What do you think of Series 10? You can vote in the poll or leave a more detailed answer in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Catch you on the flip side.